Hey, what's going on? It's the Erskin Music Show. Man, this camera is all up in my face today. Come on. Back up. Back up. Sorry about that. I want to say good morning to you all out there from Nashville, Tennessee, where it's freezing outside, hence the jacket. But hey, I wore my Bucky shirt today. What's up? People from Texas, you know what that's all about. People that are not from Texas, get down to Texas as soon as possible so you guys can check out some of that Bucky's action. But want to say good morning from Nashville, Tennessee this morning, back in the home studios and back in action once again. Great trip to Wisconsin last week and Illinois and those upper parts there. They sent me some pictures this morning from Wisconsin. And let's just say I was glad I was there last week. I would not have been able to handle that. But we are broadcasting live. I want to say good morning to all the audience that's out there from the Facebook Live crew. You guys are so interactive and so exciting. And so thank you guys for joining in on the show. Also, for the YouTube audience that tends to watch the show a little bit later, usually in repeat or review, thank you guys for tuning in as well. And thank you guys for all your comments. You can send comments after the fact. It's just I won't be able to answer them. And most of the time when I'm answering crazy anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I wanted to also thank the folks from Twitch. You guys are incredibly silent, and yet I know that you guys are watching. You're watching and you're playing games. You're listening and you're playing games. And you're kind of like this with your controller. Oh, what's that guy talking about? Okay, every once in a while. So anyway, thank you guys for that. If you get a chance to tune in and not try to implant viruses on the show, that would be much appreciated as well. Because you Twitch folks, I got to watch you. I got to watch the folks from Twitch. But at any rate, comment section is turned on. As I say always, the snarkier, the better. And that's kind of how we like to roll with this show. My name is Erskin. I'm the host of the show, the host of the Erskin Music Show. I also do Erskin Music, so we'll plug some of that in here on the show in just a second. But I wanted to get some just thoughts about things that are going on in society. And normally, if you've never seen the show before, you don't know who I am, and you're kind of checking this out, then you recognize this show is a little bit different in the sense that I am not one of these people that does this every day. I pay attention to things every day, but I'm also a music artist that tours. And so you will get shows from various locations. Last week, I was in Illinois, I was in St. Louis, I was in Wisconsin, doing broadcasts from all those different places and doing interviews. And so you never know where I'm going to show up. I might be all over the country. Next week, I'm going to be doing a broadcast from Pennsylvania. And so we're literally all over the map. It's good to hear from you guys and see you guys whenever I get a chance to do that. But I will say that usually when I'm traveling, I don't have as much access to the 24/7 news cycle as a lot of people do. And so a lot of times when I'm getting back to Nashville or I'm in the flow of things, people will tell me about news that I won't have any knowledge about. And it's actually big news. It's breaking news. And so I literally did not know until yesterday that the verdict was going to be rendered. And I guess not everybody or anybody knew that that verdict was going to be rendered yesterday. And so, yeah, found out about that along with everybody else. And then the various reactions. I don't really pay a lot of attention to the media that's out there, but I just try to get a general sense of how people are reacting and responding to it. I do a lot more stuff on Twitter, and that kind of helps out with the show. What do we got going on here? Why are we locked up? Hey, 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 hey. Come on. Unlock me. Unlock me. So at any rate, hopefully you guys can still hear me at this point. If you can hear me, then just give me a quick thumbs up out there because my picture is locked up, but I don't think the audio is locked up. So I'm going to keep rolling. All that simply to say that as I was getting a sense of what was going on with the story here, I wanted to at least listen to a couple of pundits that were out there. And so I'm going to be using a lot from the Baptist Press this morning. Hold on a second. That's annoying even to me. Okay. Check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Annoying. Annoying. Never losing faith. All right. Mic and camera. Yes. So we back. Sorry for that delay there. But yeah, so I'm going to be using some stuff from the Baptist Press today. But before we get into that, I heard that there was a big story And if you know anything about me, thanks, Arnell. You know that I love sports and will sometimes use the platform that I have as an opportunity to talk about sports. I played college basketball at East Tennessee State University. Go Bucks! And have always loved college sports as well as professional sports. Now, having said all of that, I know that there are some tennis players out there, Arnell, giving a thumbs up out there, who are doing their thing, and that's fantastic. There are some soccer players that are out there. Don't talk a lot about baseball, but I know that's a big American pastime. Overseas, in some of the English Premier Leagues, they're thinking about starting a super league of some of the best teams from some of the best leagues over there and put them all together in one league. And apparently, this movement was gaining support to the point where they had announced that they were actually going to do this. However, after much reaction from the fans of those teams and of those leagues, they decided that they would disband that, and that actually wasn't a good idea. And so let me just get a quick poll out there for you guys who are watching, because I don't really know the demographics of this audience. Are you guys actually soccer fans? Because I would have to say, by and large, I'm not. What we would call soccer here in America, or football in other countries, by and large, I'm not. But are we a football group that's out there? Are we a tennis? I know we got at least one tennis player that's watching. Are we a tennis group that's out there? Basketball, cricket? Are you guys into curling? What do people do that watch this show? I know from time to time there's some cornhole people who are here, or as we say now, bags. There's some bags players that are out there. So what are we in this audience that's watching today? So give me a quick thumbs up, or if you have a little icon that can show what sport you play, that the ball, or I don't know, the noodle, or whatever whatever you guys have in whatever sport it is that you play, because I don't even know if this is that big a deal, but apparently overseas it is that big a deal. And since soccer is, or football is bigger than anything that we have here in America, yes, even bigger than American football. Um, that was a news story that dominated the headlines yesterday. Okay, I get it. I get it. People doing their thing. People want to play their sports. People want to love their sports. Okay, yeah. Arnell got tennis going on over there, and so that's good to see. I'll just simply say that for the devotion today, I'm going to dial in. See how I did that transition? I want to dial in an analogy from a sports analogy that Paul uses in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. Now, this comes from adapted from the Table Talk magazine, Ligoniers Ministries, but it is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 24 and 25. Do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. And in that particular analogy, Paul is using the illustration there that would have probably been resident for the Isthmian Games that took place every 2 years. And there was a variety of sports activities and competitive activities in which it required one to train. In some of the research that I did there was also opportunities for the emperor himself to participate in some of the Isthmian Games. Now, what would that be like if you were competing against the emperor of the Roman Empire? Would you just let him win just so that he'd feel better? Or would you try to beat him just barely, just so you could have bragging rights with all your friends? Or would you like beat him as bad as you possibly could beat him and then humiliate him and then get killed? Anyway, that's a sidebar for our devotion today. So we have these Isthmian Games that Paul is referring to, most likely what is in the back of his mind, and then talking about the discipline that is required for an athlete to be able to participate in those games. Participating for the wreath or the crown was the ultimate goal, but that required some type of self-control, some type of discipline, perseverance, and all of the training that was taking place there. And so the analogy, and this is not a works-based analogy, but it is one that is resultant from one's faith in Christ. James would go on and tell us that faith without works is dead. And so once one has placed their faith in Christ, regenerated by the Holy Spirit, and brought to a place where they have the Holy Spirit has gifted them with the ability to serve and to serve out of the overflow of that salvation that has been wrought in their lives, then it's incumbent upon us to use these illustrations and analogies to spur us on to continued kingdom service and good work in gospel presentation. So endurance is a word that we hear a lot in reference to our spiritual lives. Persistence is a word that we hear a lot in reference to our spiritual life. Self-control is a word that is also apparent. These are all God's ways of sharpening our focus and directing our activities in our lives. And so let that encourage you today as you listen to the broadcast. Let's focus in on those things that God has given us. Let's do that with persistence. Let's do that with some consistency. And let's do that in a way that brings forth our entire being and our entire effort for the sake of King Jesus and for the glory. So thank you, Paul, for that analogy. Thank you, Roman culture, for that illustration. And thank you guys for tuning in. At this point, let's get some sound effects going here. Oh, man, sound effects are down today. What's going on in this world? Oh, wait. And I'll always make this announcement. There's no dolphins that are harmed in the taping of this show. Dolphins. All right. So we got a new story. We are coming to the place where we talk about, yes, Michael, faithful, fidelity, covenant, faithfulness, even, yes. But let's get some reactions here to the Derek Chauvin situation. And I want to use the Baptist Press. I forgot to put the show link in here, but this is baptistpress.com. Resources, Baptist leaders react to the Chauvin verdict. Sorry, I didn't get that in the show notes today. I knew there was something I was forgetting. But we'll get some reactions from you guys here in just a moment. Let me do this. Let's see if we can. This is the Erskin Music Show, and I put Erskin Music on the show, and sometimes the show no likey Erskin Music. And so let's do this. Let's hit the Only Love remix real quick. I'm going to try to get some show notes up for you guys and some links to the Baptist Press article. And then I'm coming right back. So those of you who are tuning in this morning, we're going to get some reactions on what's going on here after this song. And then I'm going to read through the Baptist Press article and then give you guys a couple of thoughts today that I think are important for us to consider in this cultural moment. And in fact, this is a cultural moment. If we come away with anything other than the fact that this is a cultural moment of some great magnitude that is going to affect, should the Lord tarry, future generations, law enforcement, policing in America, community relations, then we've missed out. And so the reason why I want to deal with this, and usually I put other topics in there, but this is going to be the exclusive topic today because there's so many various angles that I need to get to related to this. And so the comment section will still be turned on during this song, but I just want to let you know that I'm ramping up and getting some things started for today. So you guys keep those comments coming, and we'll be back with you guys in just
a world full of darkness. Yeah, we need a light with all of the hurting. There's no room to fight. These hands are for serving. Our love needs to move. Let's reach to each other. Oh, there's no time to lose. Only love is the answer to driving out hate. Yeah, love's gonna work when we give it away. Only love is the answer to driving out hate. Yeah, love's gonna work when we give it away. Oh, 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 oh. Only love is the answer to driving out hate. Yeah, love's gonna work when we give it away. Only love is the answer to driving out hate. Yeah, love's gonna work when we give it away. Only love. A world full of darkness. Yeah, we need a light with all of the hurting. There's no room to fight. Only love is the answer to
All right, we're back with the Erskin Music Show, and the comment section is turned on. So let's race ahead because I got a lot to get to today, and so excited about the fact that we got some folks who are joining us today, some eyeballs, some ears that are listening to this, and wanted to get into this today. Thank you guys so much again for all the different audiences and groups that are viewing out there. Thank you guys for checking out Erskin Music and the Erskin Music Show. Let's get started. Here's the link. I'm able to get this up on the show now. It's the BaptistPress.com/resource/news. There were a couple of things that I wanted to read from this, and I'll be making some commentary along the way. So as you guys want to jump in and say some things, that's great. I'm going to give a summary at the end of this, excuse me, and then we'll get going here. Okay, so this is Minneapolis Baptist Press. Leaders and pastors in the Southern Baptist Convention joined together on April the 20th and commenting on the verdict of police officer Derek Chauvin is guilty on all counts in the death of George Floyd. And it goes on to talk a little bit about what those counts were. And so thanks, Marcy P. I'm going to be in the studio here today and tomorrow. So I just wanted to let you know that. I'm also going to be in the studio Friday. I don't even know what day today is, but we'll be in the studio until Saturday, but we got another backup time that's coming. I'll get you in the studio with me as well. Just to let you know that. And so for all you guys, you can be praying because I got studio time after the show today. But the jury issued a verdict after 10 hours of deliberation and almost 11 months after a bystander videoed Chauvin, an 18-year veteran of the Minneapolis Police Department, kneeling on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds after detaining him on May 25th, 2020, when Floyd used a counterfeit $20 bill to pay for cigarettes. His death that day touched off a nationwide protest and violence. Today, Judge Peter Cahill read the verdict. The jury found Chauvin guilty of second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. Chauvin was taken into custody immediately and will be sentenced in the coming weeks. I believe it's 8 weeks or so before he's sentenced, and he could potentially be sent to prison for decades. While lamenting Floyd's death, several Southern Baptist leaders said they were thankful justice had been served. All right, let me stop there with this part of the article and just say, are we an audience, and it doesn't really matter here at this point, are we an audience that says that justice was served? Now, I know when we say justice is served, let me just give you guys a framework for how that works. There's never a sense in which justice is served until the Lord comes back and perfect justice is served. Vengeance is mine, the Lord says, I will repay. We know that when the Lord comes and sets the scales of justice correct and the balance correct, there are factors that he knows that we don't know. There are things that the Lord has allowed to happen in our lives and things that have happened in our lives that we look at and we think, I don't really understand why that's the case. That's never the case with the Lord. He always completely understands what he's making happen in one place and how that's impacting another place and what are the resulting facts. And so we know, or at least we should know, when we come into a situation like this, we automatically realize that perfect justice is never going to be applied. Justice in the sense that Derek Chauvin is not going to be punished to the degree that some people think he ought to be punished. Life for a life. You know, there's that consideration there. There are some who believe that the punishment is going to be too severe, and we're welcome and we're entitled to have all those different opinions, and you're welcome on the show, whatever your opinion is of that. But I just wanted to say as a framework for today that perfect justice is never going to be served until the Lord himself returns and sets the scales and the balances exactly correct. No one can argue against God at that point to say, well, maybe, you didn't consider this appropriately or correctly. So that's the background that I want to say this. And so I invite different reactions to what's going on here. So justice as a measure of the way that we humans, and especially in our American society, culturally enjoy and appreciate the freedoms against the backdrop of justice, lady justice, blind justice, meaning police officer does something that's wrong, even though they're an authority figure in our society, they're equally held accountable to people who are in the society with an accurate and blind and what we would consider to be fair scale of justice. That's our ideals, at least. And I know that there's a degree into which we can never obtain that. And so give me your comments as it relates to that, but just keep in the back of your mind that there's going to be varying degrees of people who tune in this conversation. And so I just said that backdrop because I want to welcome everybody to participate in this discussion. And yet at the same time, I know that there are some reactions that are out there that I have read that have basically said this should be considered a mistrial and all of these counts should be dismissed and, so on and so forth. So we run the gambit here in the United States of America. but I'll continue to go on and read. All right. So Arnell's, I believe that Chauvin received the just verdict for his actions. Okay. That's an important part to consider, and we'll talk more about that. The jury in this case deliberated. This is continuing with the Baptist Press article. The link is down at the bottom of the show. Taken into custody immediately and was sentenced in the coming weeks. He could potentially face decades, as I said before. Here's the reaction from Southern Baptist leaders. The jury in this case deliberated and made a unanimous guilty verdict. Unfortunately, the guilty verdict won't bring George Floyd back to his dinner table with his family and friends, said Marshall Albury, pastor of Antioch Baptist Church in Fairfax Station, Virginia, an SBC first vice president. It's a tragic loss, and there are no winners. I do want to stop real quick with that comment. Thanks, Constance, for your comment this morning. But I wanted to stop with that comment for just a second and just kind of camp there for just a few minutes and say that I believe, as I've read through this article several times, that that was probably one of the best statements that was made. From a standpoint of, this is the Erskin Music Show, is music and Christian worldview. That's what we do here. But from the standpoint of a Christian, even as we're seeking justice and even as we're talking about justice and the ways that we as humans, under the stewardship of God's guidance and with the stewardship and responsibilities to administer justice, we recognize that there are no actual winners in this situation. Derek Chauvin, even if he receives, like Michael was talking about earlier, the just verdict for his actions, there are those that are affected by his actions who will continue to be affected by his actions on both sides. His family, taking them into consideration, and the fact that he's going to be extremely absent. We talk about absentee fathers and absentee men in our society. Excuse me. I need a laugh button or a cough button. But there's that absence and that gap that's there, unmistakable. And then obviously, even though justice was rendered as a verdict, that is not going to bring George Floyd back to his family and put him at the dinner table. And I thought that that was well said by Pastor Osbury. What do you guys think about those comments and looking at both sides and maybe all sides of the spectrum of this issue? You know, for Christians, a lot of people will accuse us sometimes of being trite. They'll accuse us of being a little bit narrow-minded. I suppose that in many regards, some of those labels are true, but in very many regards, as we've pressed into science and as we've pressed into other deeper matters, there's a perspective that I believe that the Christian worldview gives us, in the sense that we begin to understand there's a wide variety of things for us to consider. If we're going to be people who do justice, if we're going to be people who live justly, we don't just consider one side. You know, I've called myself on a variety of occasions a person who's a centrist, in the sense that swinging wildly to one side or the other doesn't seem to be the appropriate response. There are those who say, and this is kind of how that centrism works in my own world, you know, Republican, Democrat. Let's just take the two sides of that duality, which I think is a little bit silly, but the two sides of that duality, and people say, well, I'm going to lean hard in the direction of conservatism, which I'm conservative. So I'm going to lean hard in the direction of republicanism. This is what some people argue. And because of that, and because I'm conservative and because I have biblical values, then God must also therefore have Republican values. And we make the misnomer and the mistake of thinking that now we must endorse or baptize everything that is conservative. On the other hand, there are very good theological minded people who say, well, if we actually read what Jesus did and how Jesus interacted with the poor and Jesus interacted with the stranger and the alien and God's instructions related to them, then we would be a little bit more charitable in some of our progressivism. And so they lean heavy in the Democratic direction. And they say, well, this is obviously God's. We're going to baptize everything that's Democratic because these are the principles that we hold. Well, the centrist comes, like myself, and says, man, maybe a pox on both of those houses, because Jesus would do a little bit of both of those things, and not swing hard one way or to swing hard the other way is a misnomer. That's kind of like Tony Evans said at one point, if you're a Democrat, then you can only be Democrat light. If you're a Republican, then you can only be Republican light so far as the kingdom of God is understood. There's a variety and a wide spectrum that is introduced as a result of the Christian worldview and thinking. And so we should embrace that and maybe come to the center of that. On this particular issue, the reason why I'm laboring long on this point is because there's a variety of ways that we see this issue and a variety of ways that we see families that are being impacted. We see George Floyd and his family and the circumstances related to him. And then we see Derek Chauvin and the situation related to him and by extension, police in America. So being able to take both of those things, I think it's appropriate and right for the Christian to look at their response as being one in which we pray for justice. We seek justice. We seek to live justly. We seek to do justice. We seek ourselves to be accountable for the instructions and the laws that are given to us. We also seek to enfranchise those who are doing good in our society. And so we could never swing hard to the place of saying all cops are bad because this cop was bad. You see where I'm going with that? There's a variety of perspectives that we use there. Let me continue on in the articles. And like I said, the comment section is turned on, so you guys are more than welcome to jump into the discussion at any point. I know I'm talking fast, but we got a lot to get to in relationship to this article. Let's see. Pastor Emery Berry, pastor of Green Forest Community Baptist Church in Decatur, Georgia, near Atlanta, urged others to see the verdict as a starting point of healing. Now, that's going to be talked about a lot in our society. Barry said, as we grieve for the Floyd family and all those who have died senselessly at the hands of law enforcement, our souls also grieve for those who still cannot see the wrong that was committed on that horrific day. Let me get some comments. I know you guys are out there and you're watching, but let me get some comments on that. In the circles of people that you're around, is there a sense in which we look at George Floyd as some sort of misnomer in our society? And I say misnomer in the sense that why is he being vilified? I mean, why is he being heralded as someone who is a hero in our society when, in fact, there were things that he did wrong? And there's that whole group that's out there that's kind of trying to downplay and kind of downgrade. I know Candace Owens was one that I kind of took issue with, and I love a lot of stuff that Candace Owens does. In fact, Candace, if you're out there, you're very much invited to the show. I know you're here in Nashville, so we could do a show together, or you can come on and show everybody how brilliant you are. And in fact, you are brilliant. But I did take issue with Candace Owens that got a lot of views on online because I don't know if it was black on black crime. I don't know why people like that video so much more than all of my other stuff. But I wanted to be clear about the fact that there's an appropriate time, an appropriate way to respond to things that are going on. And the kind of rant and dogpile that she did to just basically besmirch the character and the life of George Floyd on the day of his funeral, I didn't think was helpful for his family. I didn't think it was helpful for our nation. And so on that point, I challenged Candace Owens to maybe consider backing off of that a little bit. And she hasn't necessarily continued that. I don't know what she's doing here in Nashville. I see billboards of her all over the place. And so I know she can't be censored and she can't be canceled by the cancel culture. So, I mean, I don't know. That's her marketing that's going on there. But I simply bring that in because I know that there are detractors who are out there. And it seems to be a cottage industry. In fact, maybe very well enfranchised that we have in our society, those who, no matter what the decision is, their position is to come in to be a contrarian. And so here we are. Here's the duality that we have here in America. We have people who, like myself, are committed to being a centrist, who come and we say, well, what does a biblical worldview have to do in response to this? Or how does it relate to in response to this? And then on the other side of that, we've got people who are contrarian. So whatever they see the cultural movement or the majority of the people going in the direction of, they're going to automatically cut hard the other direction. I don't know that that's always so helpful because I think sometimes, like in this cultural moment, I think we need to give some space to say that justice was rightly applied, at least as a healing salve to a lot of African Americans in this country, myself included. Let me say that. It's important for us to see decisions like this and to hear decisions like this, to believe, not with perfect justice, but that a true type of justice in the culture that we live in can be administered and that true accountability can be administered. And so Big Head, I see you over there looking at me. Big Head agrees. Ruby and Scooby in the back, they also agree that this was, to some extent, a healing salve upon the wounds of injustice and racism here in America. Maybe you don't see it that way. Maybe you see the majority of people flying in that direction, and your automatic response is if the majority of the culture is going that way, they must be wrong. And so I'm going to cut hard the other direction. And this is a terrible day. And this is hut, 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 hut. So I got some comments yesterday from some folks on Twitter who were saying this is a mistrial and this is an injustice in the opposite direction. And this looks bad for the police. And I'll probably agree with that. It probably doesn't put policing in a very positive light when we know that these things have happened. They happen. Obviously, there was a story last night of a young lady, I think she was 16 years old in Ohio, a young African-American teenager who was shot down. She was wielding a knife and doing some different things. And, there'll be people who jump in on that story as well and say, well, maybe she shouldn't have been shot, or I don't know all the details related to that. But we live in a society in which the centrist is often battled by those who cut hard in the contrarian position. Usually they tend to be a little bit more cynical. Usually they tend to be a little bit more pessimistic. Where do you find yourself in this cultural conversation? Are you more of a centrist that can look at things biblically from a variety of ways? Are you more of a contrarian that says, you know what? And this applies even to those who have a biblical mindset. The majority of the world is going to hell, right? That's what the Romans chapter 1 would point us in the direction of. The creation is a witness to God, and even though we reject God, we have no excuse. So if most people are going that direction, we as Christians are cutting hard the other direction, and we're kind of like the frozen chosen. And there's ways that you can abuse that theology, and you can become a contrarian to your own demise. So where are you at this morning? I'm looking for the comments in the comment section, and hopefully I didn't get turned off by the powers of Facebook. So here's a couple of things that I wanted to continue on with the article. This is by Emery Berry. My prayer is that will move us toward healing and greater police reform. Over the last year, I've gained a lot of hope by seeing various cultures, nationalities, and races come together with the hopes of seeing a better America. Southern Baptist President, J.D. Greer, pastor of the Summit, acknowledged the historical significance of the verdict for Black Americans and the push for all to speak up for racial justice. So what are your reactions to our story for today? Thank you guys again for tuning in. I know I need to slow down just a little bit. I keep giving you information. But do you guys have a take on this today? Are you optimistic? If you are in the minority culture, or cultures, as it were, here in America, are you encouraged to see justice take place? If you're not in the minority culture, in the majority culture, are you a little bit nervous? Because Saturday I got into some of my prognostications, and we kind of heated some things up a little bit on the Way Forward show. That was pretty intense on Saturday, but just to kind of circle back to some of the things that I was saying there. This is a unique cultural moment. Some have described it as the latest or fourth great awakening in our society. And I think they're probably right, as sociologists and cultural commentators remark. A great awakening in the sense not of a religious sense, although we pray that it would eventually turn into that, but a cultural movement and wave that swept across our country, in which literally hundreds of thousands of people have been galvanized for a single cause and with a type of singularity of purpose to come out and to do these marches and demonstrations. And while I am against the riots, I would include that as part of the effect of this cultural moment. Not that I'm endorsing riots, not that I'm endorsing violence. I'm just saying, if you look at Great Awakening in a cultural sense, justice being the issue, inequality being the issue, then we have marching, we have awareness, we have protests, and then obviously the dangerous and more unproductive side of that is the rioting as an emotional overflow and response to this great awakening that's happening? Do you, in the majority culture, see these moments as a great awakening in our society? Well, on Saturday, I said that it is a great awakening. In fact, I said that eventually what's going to happen because of this great awakening is that the majority culture that is white, and then let me speak specifically and pointedly to the majority culture that is white and evangelical, will continually lose influence in our society. That's my prognostication. And the only way that you will continue as a powerful force in society, that is white evangelicals, is by learning a skill that you are very poor at. And that is how to partner with and enfranchise minority voices, ministries, and platforms so that we appear not just because of some event or service, but we appear to be a unified front, moving and advancing the gospel forward. Anything less than that, and the grabbing toward or the fear-based response that would say, no, we've got to keep minorities as minorities, and we've got to keep ourselves in the majority position, I think will be a detriment to Christianity in America. It will be a detriment and a deep blow to evangelicalism in America. If we're clutching, if we're fearful, if we're looking at this moment and saying, man, critical race theory and all these different things are out there, we just got to shut this thing down. We just got to, we got to resist this. We got to push against this. We got to stop this movement. We got to stop what's going on. Well, maybe instead of being the cultural stoppers of force, because I'd hate to stand in front of a rushing stream. I'm from Texas. We get flash floods all the time. Don't go do it. Don't drive through high water. Instead of stopping this movement, is there a way for us to understand the movement and then, as spiritually minded people, advance upon what's right about the movement? So here we are as Christians, justice. You good on that one? Hopefully, there's not anybody that's sitting there folded arms and going, I don't think God is for justice. I don't think God likes it when people treat people with respect and fairness. I don't think I like it when God uses police officers. So if that's your perspective on things, then that's kind of already a little bit weird. So I say all that simply to say, invite your comments, invite your thoughts on this issue. And then we're going to not spend too long on this today because I've got a couple of other thoughts that I wanted to give you. So pause, race car. All right. So thanks, Arnell, for your comments and others who have, I'm not putting your comments on the screen. Sorry. And Constance, who earlier on the show was telling us that justice was served. Thank you for that comment. I wanted to make sure, though, however, just a quick thumbs up or a quick, even if you're not in a place where you can type a lot of things. And I just realized the other day how unique that is. There's about a 10-second delay here as I've kind of marked time. So people are hearing things and then they're responding to those things when they can get around to it. And so there's a delay, you're responding, and then there's a little bit of a delay getting back. And so some of the real-time conversation gets a little bit interrupted. And I don't know what you can really do to fix that at this point, but I recognize that that is a thing. And so as you guys are putting comments up, thumbs up, here's what's going on here. I really do appreciate those of you who have taken the time to write some very long comments in the comment section, because not only do you have to hear it, but you have to process it and you have to immediately begin thinking about it so that you can give a commentary on something. And so thank you very much for those thoughtful comments. I always appreciate that. I can't always read those in real time. Just the nature of what's going on here. I've got a lot of different things that I'm controlling and switching and getting going here. But at the same time, I do always appreciate you guys' comments and thoughts on this show. Even if you disagree with what it is that I'm saying, even if you think that I'm a crazy man, well, I kind of am, but that's okay. That's another story. I am a music artist, and so you're going to get that from time to time. So let me keep going here because I've got a couple other things that I wanted to say. Where are we at in reaction to this verdict? That's my question. I think the Southern Baptists are, I thought this was a very good article. That's why I wanted to share it with you guys today. The link for the article is down at the bottom of the show today. Look, it's scrolling right now across the screen. There it goes. Oh, wait, no, there it goes. Follow the bouncing ball. So there's that. And you can read that. I didn't read the article in its entirety, but I thought it was good for leaders to be responding in a way. Ronnie Floyd and other Southern Baptist leaders from a variety of cultures were responding to the issue. And so I was glad that they didn't just get black pastors to respond or just get white pastors to respond. And so good job. I'm a, I'm a fan of good reporting and accurate reporting. If there's anything that's inaccurate, let me know. Do you consider this this is my question for the audience there. And Mike, thank you for participating today and joining in. I'll try to get your comments up here as soon as I can read them, but switching back through notes. Do you think that this is a positive and hopeful thing in American history? I was talking to my son last night as we were coming from football practice, and I said, you will be old enough to remember where you were and what you were doing when you heard the news and began to process as we were talking through what is the impact of this. Well, for generations, people are going to talk about this decision and the aftermath of this decision and what this has meant for a long period of injustice that has been perpetrated against African Americans in our society, and hopefully a long trail of working back confidence and trust as a result of this and perhaps other decisions that will be coming and realignments of things that are happening in our society. So do you look at this as a hopeful period, or do you look at this as a detrimental period in our history to have so many things that are changing? Policing will be changing in our society. The way that we render, well, not necessarily render verdicts, because truth is truth, but the way that we go about seeing the public and the community's voices in some of these decisions, I think will be impacted by this. And I'm not trying to be needlessly controversial here, but I did want to talk about the Donald here in just a moment. I know the Donald hadn't said anything. He will, but hopefully he won't. But Mike says he's cautiously optimistic. It's the best way to describe things right now. This could lead to real change, but that has to be established through a pattern of behavior. Mike, I didn't even read what you said, and I said what you said. It's like we were thinking the exact same thing at the exact same time. It's amazing. That's crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read the comment before I start talking about stuff here, because you guys are probably thinking what it is that I'm thinking, and you're probably thinking it better than I am. So appreciate you. Thank you so much for that, Mike, for jumping in there and clarifying some things. I'm not trying to be needlessly controversial, but this is a little controversial. And I know risk is not always right. But for the sake of a show here that is one part Christian worldview, one part Christian entertainment, one part Christian, whatever you want to call it, music and show, I want to just say this, not to be needlessly controversial, but I am not optimistic, hypothetically, that if we still had Donald Trump as our president, the reaction would have been as appropriate as President Biden's reaction and response to the family upon calling them and hearing the news of the verdict. I'm just saying, I know I got a lot of conservatives that watch this show. A lot of my friends are diehard Republicans. Republicans they cannot always do things well. Neither can the Democrats, but I'll just say that. But I have no confidence that if Donald Trump was still our president and still in public view, he would be making any comments that were helpful. He had a track record of not doing that in some very critical times. And look, I'll be the first person to speak up for the right of babies to live and murdering of children. And I'll go die on that hill. I don't care who's mad at me about that. That is a biblical value that I have. But let me just also say this. I'm going to come to the other side of the table and say, I'm really glad in this situation, as it relates to the conscience of our culture and our society that Donald, can you hear me, people out there? That Donald Trump is not the president of the United States because he would say something stupid during this time because he has a track record of saying stupid things during important times and inciting riots. But that's another subject. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there just so that you guys don't think I'm faking it. I didn't bring Big Head in here and just put him in front of the camera and oh no 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 no. No, the actual real Erskine that showed up today is the real Erskine. If you don't like this show, I don't know why you wouldn't like the show. I try to come down in the middle. Donald Trump was great at some things that he did. He was great on issues of life, and I'm fully in support of that. But there were other issues. This one being in a case in point, not very good at all. I'm glad he's gone. I'm glad he's not speaking. He may speak later. He may say something good. Clap. I'll be so excited if he does say justice was served. But he'll probably either say something stupid or say nothing. And usually, what that tended to do was enfranchise other people who thought like him, but weren't willing to come out and say things. And so, what's interesting about this is there hasn't been a lot. I mean, there have been some negative reactions, but there hasn't been a lot of negative reactions because those people who usually find audience with Donald Trump when he says something stupid like, oh, the police officers and we want to back the blue. And I mean, he'll just completely take a sidebar on something like this and not even refer to what it actually was. Usually those people don't have the courage now to speak up, which doesn't necessarily mean that we're getting better in America. It just means that all the people who had enfranchised their voices because they had another crazy person come out and speak for them are now not as emboldened. And I'm glad. All right, a couple other takeaways, and then we will jump off the show. We've been balling out for about 51 minutes now. Okay, policing in America will change. Oh man, that's a. I get comments from police officers from time to time, and how to do this real quick. How to do this. All right, so I'll do it like this. I'm thinking. I'm verbal processing here as we go. Yeah. So here's what I want to do. For the sake of a longer conversation about policing in America, I'll just simply say this as hopefully faithful member of the Justice Circle here in Nashville. We are a collaborative group that tries to integrate all of the different parts of justice seekers. I'm not reading the mission statement because I don't have it in front of me, but justice and truth seekers here in Nashville, collaborating with as many groups as we possibly can from a faith-based perspective to give Nashville in the areas of healthcare, policing, and education the best that we can possibly offer for a stronger and more optimistic future in Nashville. And so being that that's the case and being that I'm in on some of the meetings with police chiefs and different things, I won't share that right now. I don't know that I can actually do that right now. More to come on that later, though. I want to say this not as a swipe against the police. I am for the police. I am for law enforcement. I am for the protection of the community. I am for the harmonious relationship that exists when law enforcement and community gather together, understand one another, communicate effectively with one another, serve, protect, all of those different things. I'm so for that. And I'm so glad that I'm a part of the Justice Circle and organization that is so for that as well. But here's what I want to also say. What we have known to be policing in America will and is changing. It is changing, perhaps more than any of you know and more than I can talk about right now. I'll get to that. But it will change, and I think it'll be better. I think this decision, I think others where there's more accountability, I think others where there's more responsibility and community that is beginning to develop, and even the changes that are taking place. I know there's a lot of people who are retiring. I know that police chiefs are having a hard time recruiting. A lot of people are not getting into this anymore. They're seeing the writing on the wall. They're seeing things change. There's sort of a Cold War, a demilitarization of policing going on in America. And I'm not an all cops is bad guy. Don't come to me with that. Don't send me that mail. I'm not that guy. But policing in America will change. It is changing. It's going to change. It's going to be different in subsequent years. I view that as a good thing. I view that as a helpful thing. I view that as a positive mark in American history. Man, it's so easy for the deconstructionist to take apart the things that existed. And there's so many examples of those things. And so you just start tinkering with and taking all those things apart. People do that with American history. I mean, the way that we've treated Native Americans, the way that we've treated Asian Americans, obviously African Americans, Hispanics in our country, Latinx. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And if you wanted to deconstruct America based on all the egregious things that we've done, our wars, our embargoes, our imperialism, that's easy to do. It's easy to deconstruct. If you wanted to look at Christianity, let's just put Christianity up in the front. Abraham Piper, talked about him on the show last week. If you want to deconstruct Christianity, there's a lot of examples out there that are counter to Scripture. And there's a lot of things, maybe even in Scripture, that don't fit with our modern sensibilities that you could come out and you could say, I'm going to deconstruct this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. It's easy to deconstruct. It's really hard to put things together. And so we are putting together what I believe is going to be some positive, what I believe will be a positive trajectory in America. Now, I'm not a post-millennial, so we'll make everything better and better and better. Because when you listen to most Christians, everything is getting worse, 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 bad, 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 bad. I'm a centrist. And so there are some things that are getting better. There are also some things that are getting worse. There are some things that are changing. Can we all agree that there are some things that are changing? And as it relates to the police, I'm not so sure, and you can join me in this, but I'm not so sure that things aren't changing for the better. That's my cultural commentary for today. That's my thought that I wanted to kind of leave you guys with today, is that I think that there are some things that are actually getting better as a result of some of the things that I'm seeing. Now, that seems counterintuitive for a lot of the folks, some who watch the show. How can things be getting better? The Democrats are in control. The Democrats are in the White House. We have this guy as the president. We have this lady as the vice president. Things can't possibly be getting better because they're doing all these different things behind closed doors, trying to pass all these laws, and they're trying to spend all this money, and they're taxing the rich, and da 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 da. And so, beware that we don't become a slave to our perspective and a slave to our view of things. Man, come on. Microphone, checker. That last one got me. Epoch. All right. So, what's your perspective? How do you view this cultural moment? What are your reactions? What are your thoughts? I left Mike Martin up there for a long time because, well, that was the last comment. But that was also a very good comment. So that is my thoughts for today. We're going to have a little bit more Erskin music here in just a few seconds. But I wanted to play Life Matters today as we get ready to close out the show. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions, opportunities for you to be snarky, please join in that. I don't mind. I mean, everybody else joins in with craziness. Little crazy never hurt anybody. But thank you guys so much for your comments today. This has been the Erskin Music Show. We're going to go out on a note here with Little Life Matters. And if you want to make comments, I can still perhaps interact with some of those. So keep your comments flowing until the end of the show. Then I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. We have a special guest, Misty Griggs. Oh, yeah, I got to announce a special guest. Special guest is Misty Griggs tomorrow. She's coming from Advantage Talent Agency. You see that image there? So I'm one of the talent for Advantage Talent, and Misty has just been a tremendous agent for me. Those of you who wondered how I got in the Toby Mac video, she's the agent that got me into the video. It was the acting side of things, more so than the music side of things. Although, Erskin Music has bought the ball out. So there's that, and she's going to share a little bit about Advantage Talent Agency, as well as she's going to share a little bit about some of the projects that we've worked together on. And I may even ask her a little bit of what is your thoughts about this cultural moment. So we got a special guest, special guest tomorrow, Misty Griggs from Advantage Talent Agency. And if there are any of you guys who are out there who are in the arts and entertainment industry, you'll want to know who Misty is. You'll want to know who Advantage Talent is. And they have done a lot of cool things to kind of help me get into some other audiences there. So before we leave, Joseph, thank you for that comment there. I might only be 100% right on one thing. it's like the issue of inerrancy, but we'll get to that later. So Joseph, thank you for your participation in the show. I should thank everybody for their participation. Even if you got on the show and you said, Erskin, you're 100% wrong, I wouldn't care. I would just like the fact that you took the time and cared enough to join the show. And man, just thank you so much for all those that I have argued with, and for all those that have taken a different view than my own, and had the forethought to listen to the show long enough to make a comment. Man, thank you for that. Even if you're saying to yourself, Erskin, you're an idiot. Thank you for that. I just want to, with all Christian love, like I completely disagree. I'm not always an idiot, just sometimes. But even if your perspective is, hey, you're an idiot, thank you for being willing to care enough to call me an idiot today. And that's why we ball on the Erskin Music Show. Here's my stuff. Here's my other stuff. Here's my music. the screen. This has been the Erskin Music Show. Thank you guys so much for all your comments today. We're signing out. And since I mentioned Donald Trump on the show, you're also invited to come on the show at any time.